They wouldn't have let somebody
based up, and that, you know, it didn't represent the entirety of their communications over the course of the election, which of course led me to believe, well, that there were more communications than merely the exchange that I had obtained. But in that exchange, he expressed that he felt like he was a friend of WikiLeaks. He kind of asked WikiLeaks to stop publicly attacking him because they were trying to distance themselves publicly from him during the election.
Right.
But the morning after the election, WikiLeaks reached out again and said, "Are you happy now? We were more free to communicate."
Yeah, and Stone, I mean, he's always shown his hand. What are we to make of the fact that he was saying that Podesta's about to go in the barrel, basically predicting that WikiLeaks was about to release all of these stolen emails? We saw the same thing with a person that when Al Franken was about to be attacked, 9 hours before Franken was attacked, he said, "Hey, look, this is coming out." He may have done the same thing.
It just seems like such a coincidence.
May have done the same thing with Spitzer. What are we to make?
That's the big question. He still denies that he had any advanced knowledge of anything that WikiLeaks put out, that he was not told about details necessarily about what WikiLeaks would drop during the election, let alone the Podesta leaks. But obviously this new revelation that he was in direct communication with WikiLeaks kind of cast doubt on everything that he said about his relationship during the election.
Was he under oath when he testified?
He was under oath.
What did he say?
We don't know what he said behind closed doors. That transcript has not been made public, and I myself was not able to confirm that he specifically denied talking to WikiLeaks directly. He has since kind of narrowed his denial, saying that he only ever said that he didn't communicate with Julian Assange directly, not necessarily WikiLeaks. So, of course, the two are pretty interchangeable. Assange, of course, has access to the WikiLeaks account, and he is often the one running it. So, in as far as he can deny that he ever spoke to WikiLeaks or Julian Assange directly, you have to remember that, of course, he was communicating with the WikiLeaks Twitter account, which Assange runs.
You've studied WikiLeaks pretty extensively and Roger Stone's relationship to it. Did he present himself as representing the Trump campaign at any point? Did he say, "I'm here on behalf of Donald Trump"? Have you seen that in any of the communications?
No, I haven't. He wrote to WikiLeaks and he said, you know, "I've been publicly defending you on national television. I've been, you know, defending you against the charges that you're Russian agents, against the sexual assault charges against Julian Assange." But he always framed it in terms of you know, that he was an ally of WikiLeaks. Now, of course, Roger Stone was in touch with the Trump campaign, and he was in touch with Trump himself during the election. So how much of that he actually told Donald Trump about, or anyone in the campaign orbit, we still don't know.
So Jeremy, if you're Bob Mueller, you have so much to work with. You've got, of course, Roger Stone apparently not telling the truth about his contacts with WikiLeaks. You've got, of course, Paul Manafort arrested and charged because of his contacts with
looking into the president before the 2016 campaign. Now, remember, this was a red line for President Trump. He said, if Mueller looks into my money, my family's money, we have a problem. I don't know how this won't qualify. What will be his response? We may learn when he starts tweeting in moments. The president's son-in-law, another big headline, stripped of his top security clearance. All right, what does this all mean? Why did it happen? What does it mean going forward? We have CNN contributor and the former director of the Office of Government Ethics, Walter Shaub. It's good to have you, sir. You're the perfect guest for this morning. We have two things to unpack. We have what this means for Trump in terms of the special counsel looking into him and his money, and then we have Kushner. Let's start with Kushner. Kelly pulling the clearance, right move?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been such a strange situation to have so many people in the White House walking around with interim clearances and accessing very sensitive information. And of course, these are all the fruits of nepotism, because there's a sense that the White House has been reluctant to pull the trigger on denying clearances to people who shouldn't have clearances. We saw that with Rob Walker, the White House staffer accused of spousal abuse. because to deny their clearances would create a situation where it's hard to explain why you haven't denied Jared Kushner's clearance.
So it's all grows out of the Rob Porter situation, fine. And there's a lot of political undertones to this. You know, will Kelly survive moving on the family? Would he be able to do this if he didn't have the tacit approval of at least the president? Those are political questions. However, what happens now if the president says, yeah, no, I got to have your process. I need Jared to do these things. I'll let him see classified information anyway. That's my call.
Well, I don't think we can rule out that'll happen, and I'm not sure we're going to know that'll happen, at least not unless somebody leaks that, because the president has the authority to do it. But, you know, the White House, or at least the Executive Office of the President, recently released a memo where they wrote, it's just because something is legal doesn't make it right. And I think that would be the case here if the president says, we're going to ignore all these security concerns and put very sensitive classified information in my son-in-law's hands because nepotism.
Or because, like everything else, I think this is a hoax, I think this is a witch hunt, and you'll probably never find out anyway. That last part is a very key component. Thank you for raising that, because if we don't find this out, we may never know. That's an important consideration. All right, now, in terms of what's happening with Trump. He didn't release his taxes. He's never opened the books on his businesses. So, did lack of transparency at least contribute, in your estimation, to these questions from the special counsel looking into his financial dealings even before the campaign?
I'd have a hard time believing that Robert Mueller is just on a fishing trip because he wants to see what he doesn't know. There had to have been some breadcrumbs that led him there. But it is also true to say that there's been a severe lack of transparency stemming from the president not releasing his tax returns the way every prior president in modern times has done. You also have to understand the limitations of the financial disclosure report he files, which my office reviewed, and in fact, I signed his financial disclosure report. That report doesn't require you to disclose business partners, business liabilities, ongoing projects, any of the kind of stuff that could give us a clue as to whether there are serious concerns in a security area because he's vulnerable to blackmail or to leveraging for financial reasons.
So when Trump and his people say he has provided more disclosure than anybody else in history, look at all this paper we let you guys see, you say quantity is not quality.
No, he's produced less information than his predecessors, at least since the enactment of the Ethics in Government Act, which set out the standards for financial disclosure. His financial disclosure report was compliant with the law, so I signed that. Of course, they asked to not have him have to sign it, and he'd have been the first person out of all of the millions of financial disclosure reports that have been filed to not certify that his report is true.
What are Schaub's big questions going forward?
Well, I think one of the glaring things just standing out there in plain sight is that the president has refused to enforce sanctions imposed by a bipartisan majority in Congress against Russia. And so Russia has faced no consequences as a result of their meddling in our election. And we heard yesterday that he hasn't directed anybody to really proactively go after an effort to stop it from happening again. So I think that raises legitimate questions about what are his links to Russia. Do they have something on him, whether it's financial leverage or embarrassing information? And I think that's absolutely fair game for Robert Mueller to look at.
All right, important insight. Walter, thank you for helping us understand these things better. You get these issues. You were there. You worked with them. Thank you very much. All right, another story for you this morning. What does this mean? $31,000 for an office dining room set. That is the price tag for HUD Secretary Ben Carson. Under scrutiny now because it's a lot of damn money. What's going on with that? Next.
Inside the Middle East, in association with MISC.
So joining me now are two of Carly Novell. Great to see you guys this morning. Thank you so much for being with us before you head in. Samantha, let's just start with the physical wounds, okay, which I know are quite different than the emotional wounds that you all are. But you were shot twice.
Yes, I was.
Physically, how are you doing?
I got my staples removed, which is good, but the only bad thing is it's itchy, but that's the only problem for it, yeah.
And emotionally, how are you doing this morning?
I'm hesitant to walk into the building, but I know I have to like start. I have to face it head on. At least that's just my approach. I have a lot of different feelings. I want to sleep. At the same time, I want to, I kind of want to get this over with. It's a bunch of feelings.
Well said. I mean, of course, you're all over the place because there's no playbook for this, for what the right way to enter this school is. Again, Carly, how are you feeling this morning?
I'm nervous. I feel the same as her. I'm really scared to go in, but I know we have to go. And
I mean, you don't really. I'm talking to some students who have decided not to go back today. They don't know if they can go back. Do you feel that you have to go?
I think I want to go back at the same time as all my friends. I don't want to go in there for the first time alone. Even though I won't be alone, I want to start the same way that my friends do.
Yeah.
And what do you think is going to happen in there, Samantha?
Well, I don't think there's going to be much teaching. I think everyone's just going to, be happy to see each other, especially since we're starting off in the class that everything happened in.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
You are going right back into the class where you were when you were shot.
Well, not in the class, because that building is...
the whole freshman wing has been closed off, and nobody will be going back there. The windows have been taped over. The whole building has been closed off. But you mean you're going back into the same sort of class period that you were?
Exactly.
With the same
people.
And what's the thinking about that?
Well, I have a lot of feelings about that, because that class was a class where my friend was. And
you lost your best friend.
Yes, I did, yeah.
And how do you plan to cope with that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just going to see how I end up dealing with it. As I said before, I'm kind of nervous about going into the whole situation, but I don't know how I'm going to feel, to be honest.
Of course you're nervous. I mean, there will be a void of 17 people, even obviously, not just 17 people and random classmates, your best friend. And, that's kind of forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Carly, you had said that you don't want Marjory Stoneman Douglas to be remembered as the school that had the shooting. So how do you want it to be remembered?
I want it to be remembered as a school that changed something. I don't want it to be just another one. And the other ones weren't just other ones for the people that were there, but for the rest of the people in this country, everyone kind of forgot. And I don't want this to be forgotten, because something needs to change.
You all have done a great job of keeping it on our radar, keeping it front and center in the country because of the conversation that you've started. So let me bounce a couple of things off of you, because your state, the state legislature, is now considering a $67 million initiative to train and arm teachers, 10 in each school. How do you feel about that?
I don't think the teachers want to do that. I don't feel comfortable with teachers having guns. I think that law enforcement should have guns, but I don't think teachers need to have them. And I don't think we have enough money for that either. Education already doesn't have enough money, so we shouldn't be putting that towards arming our teachers.
After 2 weeks and after what you've gone through these past 2 weeks, what do you think? What do you want to see happen? What is the next step?
I want to see gun legislation. I don't want to see teachers having guns. That's just like a bailout. It doesn't do anything. I want actual things to happen. I want the age to be raised to 21. I want us to not be able to get AR-15s anymore. And arming teachers doesn't do anything about that.
I know that you tweeted out that you want the school to be known as the school that started a revolution. Mm-hmm. And do you feel that way? Do you feel that you all will be leading the charge?
I hope so. I think the march is a great start. I think things are looking like they're starting to happen, but I don't know that it will until I actually see change, I think.
I mean, you'll obviously have to keep your foot on the pedal if you want this, and it will be hard. You have to go back to school now.
The past few days have been really hard to keep talking about things, because you just want to sit back and relax, and it's hard. not to do that.
I get it. Samantha, what do you want to see happen now?
I just want to at least have a feeling of being safe. I know, at the moment, yes, I'm going through trauma, but other students, other people in class, I don't exactly know what the road is to get there, but when you walk into a classroom, no one should have looked there and okay, where's my escape route? No one should ever have to do that. I've done that multiple times, not only since the shooting, but even previously because of shootings that have occurred. Either gun legislation, strengthening background checks, whatever it may take, I just want people to feel safe going into a place. Yes, things happen, but going into a place and not really having to worry, especially school where we go every single day.
You deserve that. You deserve to feel safe in your school. Well, we'll be watching. Thank you both so much for stopping by. We're thinking of you both, and we'll talk again. Chris, they deserve to feel safe, and that's what the feeling is here about how they will be able to do that today.
All right, Allison, an important place to be on a very important day for those kids and for the country. We have another big story this morning as well, a major development in the Russia investigation, actually several. But one key question is whether President Trump's lack of transparency led special counsel Bob Mueller to dig deeper into his business dealings. How does that work? We'll tell you next.
I'm CNN meteorologist Allison Chinchar, and this weather.
He's a valued member of the team, and he will continue.
We're getting this blurring of behavior in his private and public roles.
We're going to take it as it comes along every single day.
You're going to feel the presence of emptiness.
We're more connected than ever. I don't think anything's ever going to change this.
Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is your new day. It is Wednesday, February 28th, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. I am in New York. Allison is back in Parkland, Florida. A very important day there. We're going to check in 1 second. But here's our starting line. We've had several major Russia revelations rocking the West Wing. CNN has learned special counsel Bob Mueller's team is investigating President Trump's business dealings with Russia, the key part before the 2016 campaign. Also, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly stripping the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, of his top secret security clearance. A bombshell report in the Washington Post says that at least 4 countries discussed ways to manipulate Kushner by taking advantage of his lack of experience, financial troubles, and intricate business arrangements. And a source tells CNN the president's communications director, Hope Hicks, admitting to House investigators she has had to tell white lies for the president. But a top Democrat says Hicks refused to discuss her role in drafting a misleading statement about that 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians. Allison.
Okay, so Chris, I am back here in Parkland, Florida. I am outside of Douglas High School that you can see over my shoulder, as well as a huge police presence, because it was exactly 2 weeks ago today that gunman turned Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School into a war zone. So just 1 hour and a half from now, students will return to class for the first time since then. But of course, they will be without 17 of their friends and teachers who were killed during that massacre. So throughout the morning here, we will be speaking to those students and their parents about whether they feel prepared to go back, how they're emotionally preparing, and of course, what they want to see happen next in the national debate over gun violence that they have sparked since this massacre. Legislators here in Florida are moving towards trying to figure this out. Their plan is to arm teachers. They want to appropriate millions of dollars to do so. Meanwhile, efforts in Congress do not seem to be moving as quickly. So, Chris, some of the students are already here to talk to us, and we'll be bringing you that all morning.
Important place to be. Thank you for being there for us. We'll be back with you in a second. We have all this covered this morning. Let's begin with CNN's Abby Phillip live at the White House. A lot of headlines that they cannot like.
That's right, Chris. We are learning some new information this morning about the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and also the Russia investigation. The special counsel probe appears to be looking into issues beyond the 2016 election, including the reasons behind Mr. Trump's decision to run for president in 2016. Multiple sources tell CNN that investigators for special counsel Robert Mueller have been asking witnesses about Mr. Trump's business dealings in Russia before the 2016 campaign as he considered a run for the presidency.
I have no deals there. I have no anything. I have no investments in Russia. None whatsoever.
Sources say questions from investigators include the timing of Mr. Trump's decision to run for president, any potentially compromising information the Russians may have had about him, and why efforts to brand a Trump Tower in Moscow fell through. Mueller's team also focusing on the financing of the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow.
Mueller was looking at your finances, your family's finances unrelated to Russia. Is that a red line?
Would that be a breach of what his actual...
I would say yes. Yeah, I would say yes.
The Russia probe gaining steam as the political futures of President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner remains uncertain. The Washington Post reporting that foreign officials from at least 4 countries have discussed ways to manipulate Kushner by taking advantage of his complex business arrangements, financial difficulties, and lack of foreign policy experience. The Post also reporting that White House officials were concerned Kushner was naive and being tricked in conversations with foreign leaders.
Jared Kushner was also having his own conversations with foreign officials, with people in other countries, and was not reporting those in the normal channels to White House officials.
The story came hours after news that Kushner's top-secret clearance was downgraded after months of delays in completing his background check.
For him to be the person who's carrying forward an important peace plan in the Middle East at the same time that he lacks a top security clearance, I just don't think that's workable.
He's a valued member of the team, and he will continue to do the important work that he's been doing since he started in the administration.
One of President Trump's closest aides, White House Communications Director Hope Hicks, also under scrutiny. A source tells CNN that Hicks admitted during more than 8 hours of testimony before a House panel that she's had to tell white lies for the president, but says she has not lied about substantive issues. Committee members say Hicks would not answer questions about her time in the White House or her role in drafting a misleading statement about Donald Trump Jr.'s 2016 meeting with Russians promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. Democrats on the committee demanding more transparency.
With anyone who doesn't answer questions, they ought to be subpoenaed.
This is not executive privilege. This is executive stonewalling.
Well, Chris, all of this is happening as the threat of Russian election interference remains very real. Just this week, the outgoing head of the National Security Agency made it clear that President Trump has not given intelligence officials the authority to disrupt Russian hacking at its source, despite the threat that is posed to the 2018 election just this year, Chris.
Abby, what a morning of news. On any other day, all of these, like 4 separate headlines, would dominate coverage. Today, we have to balance all of them. Thank you very much for getting us started. Let's bring in our best. We got CNN political analysts David Gregory and John Avlon. Am I wrong? Mike Rogers says, no, the president has never asked me to go directly at Russia to do anything about the cyber threat. Hope Hicks says, no, I'm not going to answer these questions, even though I came in under the intentions of being open. Jared Kushner having his clearance stripped by Kelly and what that must mean politically in the House. And then, of course, let's start with this one. David Gregory. Donald Trump said as president, if this guy, Mueller, goes after my money, that's too far. I don't know how this isn't crossing that line. If Bob Mueller is not just looking into financial transactions, but back before the 2016 campaign, who was he doing money with, what it could mean, what does that mean
But that's the essential question for investigators. I mean, you have to ask yourself, if there's a fact, right, that Russia interfered in our election, wanted to sway the election, don't know if they did, but they wanted to do it. You have a president who has not responded, who has not defended America and stood up for our election system. Why not? Well, you know, does he?
So you say fair play to look back there, look at the money.
It's fair play. I think there's no question. Anybody looking at this thinks the greatest area of vulnerability is a potential financial entanglement that somehow means that the Russians have something on President Trump. Now, that may just be speculation, but how, in a long history of involvement in Russia and around the world, do you not look at that as an investigator when you have this event that happens around this candidate?
Now, John, fair point. Trump brought some of this on himself by not releasing his taxes, not opening the books of his business in a meaningful way. So it does fuel some speculation. Still, this will rub people the wrong way who support the president, saying, oh, all the way back then you're looking? I mean, how far are you going to go? Is this another Ken Starr looking to Bill Clinton?
At the time, they were probably defending Ken Starr if they've been consistent partisans. But the point is that you got to find the roots of the question of whether the president's compromised, because there are a couple of core points you got to figure out. First of all, how come in a world full of people Donald Trump will attack at the slightest provocation, will he never and has never said a bad word about Vladimir Putin from the campaign to the presidency? The second thing is what Mike Rogers said yesterday, in his testimony, basically saying that not only has the president never ordered him to retaliate or push back on Russia, but that Putin believes he's got free rein because he won't get a pushback. That raises it from a question of being compromised in the political and personal context to national security. So follow the money, folks. It's basic. It's going to happen. It's appropriate.
And then if you're going to follow the momentum, if it is true that the chief of staff withdrew the clearance from Jared Kushner, how does he stay in the White House?
I think it's very hard. Look, you have to ask, what has Jared Kushner accomplished in the White House? What role is he serving other than, first of all, I think it's a huge problem. You start bringing in your children, right? This is nepotism.
What would give you that idea?
Yeah, right. So that should be on its face a huge problem. And look, the president, if this is somebody the president trusts, but the question is, so what is he doing? I mean, what has he done of value and substance that's helping other than distract and have huge, judgment decisions that are suspect
and maybe make vulnerable with this other development that other countries were sizing him up as an opportunity because of vulnerability.
Right. I mean, you have to ask how long he can be in this role without a security clearance. What he's got to do, he's going to do Mideast peace. He's going to deal with Mexico over, a lot of tough issues with Mexico. I think it's a real blow for him when the president said, my chief of staff will make the right decision. He's dealing with his son-in-law. And by the way, if Kelly could not have made this decision, then we would have really seen how compromised they were, because that means he would be untouchable.
But this is fascinating, because one of the core rules in politics is you never fight the family and win. In this case, Kelly seems to be winning this fight. And it's also, when Kelly floated the idea the top security clearance was going to be removed, he said, look, Jared's doing great work on the Middle East, on Mexico. But what did we find out yesterday from the Washington Post report? That Israel, United Arab Emirates, and Mexico and China have all been talking about how they think they can roll and apply pressure to Kushner because of his financial dealings.
Right. Now, of course,
that's a big deal
because of the Rob Porter situation and what they didn't know about him in vetting. So this is on them. This wasn't foisted upon them. This is something that happened organically from their mismanagement within their own. But how do we know for sure that Kelly is having the upper hand here? How do we know that this doesn't come out, removes it? The president can, in his own capacity as executive, say, I'm going to let Kushner see this stuff anyway. It's my decision. I say he can see it.
We don't
and
know that.
You went after my family, you're gone.
Yeah, possible. Yeah, and I think that's possible. I don't think the president wants that fight with John Kelly right now. I think if he really wanted it, he could have taken him out when he got pretty hot and was getting a lot of arrows his way about the handling of Rob Porter. I think we have to say something too amid these revelations that is an explanation. Still, there's a lot here to look at that seems to make sense. Mueller's got to prove it. He's got to prove something big, that the candidate for the presidency was compromised, and that he's compromised by a foreign leader, and that he made decisions to work with the guy. I think we have to remember Jared Kushner is a blank slate. He's got all these business dealings, and anybody would look at him and say, first of all, who brings in his son-in-law who's got no experience to write some of these most important
with $1 billion debt?
But a key distinction you're drawing that we try to remind people on a regular basis, although it is getting a little conflated. One is criminality, potential indictments, or political malpractice
and naivete.
Well, that's down here. That's
what I'm saying
why
is
it might have happened.
Could look at anybody and say, you know what, this guy's a blank slate. I might be able to manipulate. In other words, you could see this story being written about almost anybody that has nothing to do with whether anybody did anything wrong.
Understood. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, you may have, well, forget about bringing in the best. Forget about cleaning up the swamp. They don't know how to run this White House, and they have done things that are shady/stupid, but those aren't necessarily crimes.
None of those things are illegal. You can have incompetence and not criminality, obviously.
But they could mean something to a motivated Congress.
Right.
But they don't have the votes here, right?
But against the backdrop of only the best people, against West Wing running allegedly like a well-oiled machine, this is self-evidently chaos and Kremlinology. There are people fighting against each other in this West Wing, bleeding into the public.
Right.
And even between the chief of staff allegedly against, the son-in-law and the daughter. We had the communications director yesterday testifying on Capitol Hill, Hope Hicks, admitting, among other things, first of all, refusing allegedly to answer any questions about the transition of the White House without invoking executive privilege, and also admitting that she white lies for the president all the time, which is sort of the daintiest lie, but it's still a lie.
Is white lies a verb? I white lie?
I white lie. You white lie?
I go to you as a source.
Yeah.
What is the implication? Obviously, look, you have a little bit of a weird legal/political vibe with she won't answer questions. Well, that's going to be up to how the committee wants to exercise their jurisdiction and their purview here. So she didn't do it. It was without penalty as far as we know. But what do you make of the admission that, we told some white lies? We don't know about what. Was it about, we've never heard of any of our people meeting with Russians? We don't know anything about communications. Were those the white lies?
I mean, any of us who are parents, I think, tell our children, if you're willing to lie about small stuff, how do we know you won't lie about the big stuff? And that's why there's a criminal investigation going on. And by the way, let's also remember what the meat of this story is. The campaign manager for Donald Trump has been indicted because of fraud, and we know he has extensive ties with Russia and their puppets in Ukraine. These are big questions when you have financial entanglements with any country, including Russia, that raises the prospect of being compromised. You don't see this in electoral politics very often, which is why we have to keep our eye on the ball and look at these as important developments across the board.
None of this is normal, so let's not normalize it. Let's focus on the facts.
Understood. Gentlemen, could not cover more in less time. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Allison, as you know, you're in the right place this morning, but I needed you here. We have not seen this many headlines come out of this investigation at one time in a long time.
No, it's a big news day, as we often say, but today seems particularly so. But I am here, Chris, in Parkland, Florida, because about an hour from now, the sidewalks that you see behind me, the parking lot, will be filled with the 3,000 students returning to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School for the first time since that gunman killed 17 of their friends and teachers. And CNN's Diane Gallagher has been covering this. She joins me here in Parkland, Florida. What are we expecting today?
I think they're not really sure. I even talked to teachers, Allison, who said that right now they just kind of want to all be together. The word that I heard most from students was apprehension. They're a little nervous about coming back, but they want to be there with all of their classmates. They want to try to return to normal, whatever that means. The principal said that today is about comfort, not curriculum.
First time walking through the red gates, hearing the bells ring, there's going to be a dramatic shift in the hallway. Like, you're going to feel the presence of emptiness.
Thousands of students returning for the first time to a campus that just 2 weeks ago they ran away from in terror.
We've seen what the end of the world looks like for 17 people.
Our grades aren't as important as they used to be to us anymore. Our lives and the lives of our friends are what take priority over that now.
And while some are ready,
I guess there's a certain feeling of, relief that I am going back to school, that, we are going to return to normality and stuff like that.
Others aren't quite sure.
How do you even begin to comprehend all the empty desks and all of the friends people lost and everything else? How do you return to normalcy after that?
Teachers like Darren Levine also unsure about what to expect.
There's no playbook for this. There shouldn't be a playbook for this. And we're going to take it as it comes along every single day.
The school reopening as law enforcement sources tell CNN the massacre's death toll could have been even higher. The killer still had 180 rounds when he dropped his rifle and slipped out the building, blending in with the fleeing students. And investigators say that hurricane-proof glass the killer failed to break may have prevented him from using a third-floor window as a sniper's perch. Now this week, the schedule is shorter. Students cannot bring backpacks and security will be, quote, at an all-time high.
I know I'm going to have a lot of friends there and my parents are going to be there, so I'm comfortable going back in. But there's always going to be like that sense of anxiety surrounding the school just because it was a place of a school shooting.
Preventing other school shootings, now a rallying cry for much of the Stoneman Douglas student body. But Wednesday, for at least half a day, the focus is here.
We're going to come back as a class, and we're going to continue on.
We're more connected than ever, obviously, and I don't think anything's ever going to change this. We're going to be a brotherhood till the day we die.
And those students are actually going to be returning back to the classrooms they were in when that shooting happened 2 weeks ago today. Allison, I talked to one of the teachers, the teacher there in that story, Mr. Levine. We asked, what is he going to say when that bell rings at 7:40? He said, I got chills just thinking about it. I don't know yet. I'm not going to share it with you guys. I want to talk to the kids first. But he goes, looking at the way the past 2 weeks have gone, I'm sure that they will share it with all of you immediately. These kids have found their voices. The teachers are supportive, and they're hoping that that activism, as well as being together again, is going to help them get through what's going to be a very difficult day.
Absolutely. But they do seem activated, and that's what's gotten them through these past 2 weeks. So thank you for sharing your talks with all of them with us. And Chris, we should just let you know there are some students who are not ready to go back, who say that they can't imagine going back into, as Diane just said, what they call a crime scene. So we'll be speaking to them also. We're also going to be, in a moment, meeting two students, one of whom was shot, how they're coping today with their emotional and physical wounds as they prepare to go to class today.